life jacket to stay afloat. I want to share how nature, the environment, has not only been my foundation for understanding the world around me and almost everything around me, but also how it's become one of my most powerful tools in teaching. This is so exciting. Sorry. And so with that, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge, to do an acknowledgement of land, the land that I'm speaking to you from, the land that I call home, and the land that I teach our future generations upon. This land that was stolen from the Tongva, the indigenous people of this region, that provides me with knowledge and sustenance that I require to do my work. And I thank them for that. I find that this acknowledgement and acknowledgements like this are essential as we embark on this journey of equality and true understanding of where we have been as a human species and how far we still need to go. I teach my students this acknowledgement of land and to acknowledge and be grateful of the people who were here before us. And so first, I want to start by reintroducing myself a little bit in a way that provides some insight to who I am, how I came to be who I am today, where I've come from, and who I hope to be in the future. This identification of myself and the acknowledgement of who I come from, the people I come from, will hopefully give you a perspective as you listen to my story. My hope is that you find some understanding through my experiences, or that you are able to see some similarities and or differences that will promote growth and accountability in your own lives and people around you. So as I was thinking about what to write or what to say today, I often speak off the cuff. I'm very passionate about the issues that I stand behind, but I wanted to make sure that I wrote down very specific things to speak about, because I find that when you have spaces like this where people are intentionally sharing of their time to hear what you have to say, that it's important to ground that talk into something that people can hold on to. And so the thing that came to mind to me is to guide me through this talk was a question that was posed to me in a Black Girl Magic group that we have on my school's campus for our beautiful little Black girls. And the question that was posed was, when did you know you were Black? And I thought that that was such a profound question, a question that had never really been asked of me, one that I never really took the time to think about, because you kind of feel like you've always known that you are what you are. But there are specific experiences in one's life that that you can pinpoint when realizations happened, right? So I want to pose that question to my fellow Black African-American people on the call today, to think about for yourself, when did you know you were Black? The answers that my students gave were so different from mine that it opened up a new world of thinking for me. So I'm hoping it kind of does that for you. So I was born to two idealistic teenagers in 1973 at Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. I was born a first-generation American from an immigrant mother who came to this country as a teenager and never became a full citizen. Therefore, today's Supreme Court decision on DACA holds true gratitude in my heart, because immigration is a part of my story. As an immigrant, my mother sustained cultural as well as racial discrimination, not from just non-Blacks, but from American Blacks alike. She had an accent that she quickly lost because she would get beat up in school for it. And I mention this little tidbit of information because I have found in my life that it's played a significance in how I've been taught and how I've been raised. Soon after I was born, my father joined the Navy at 18. And by the time I was 3, we relocated from Brooklyn to Seattle, Washington. And I spent my formative years there, up in the Pacific Northwest. I find this to be also significant in the way that I think now about race. Now, Seattle, believe it or not, is a diverse city. There are definitely more areas that are majority white, and I did find my early years in those places. And by diverse, I mean there were people from the Pacific Northwest, obviously, but people from who were Pacific Islanders and from Africa, Canada, Asia. There were a lot of different people that I spent time and space around. Now, I always, however, was one of two Black children in the entire school. So what Tracy said hit home. And I know there are many, many other Black people who have gone through the same kind of experiences. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until I got to middle school that I had more than two Black friends in a class at one time. But no one ever had the same name as me, Tashanda, right? No one ever combed my hair in line for picture day. Remember, they used to come around with a little black tooth comb and they put everybody's hair in place. They would get to me and it'd be like, you look beautiful, right? I found that I could never find the pre-populated name on the mugs and the t-shirts and the pencils and all that. I didn't see myself in television shows. As a matter of fact, books, my grandmother would make story time books with my name in it specifically so that I could see my name in print because I would not see it if I could buy it at the store. I was a very creative kid. And so even though I didn't see myself in visuals in magazines on TV, mind you, this is 70s, early 80s, I, in my mind, always replaced everybody in my stories with people who looked like me. Unintentionally, I didn't even realize I did it. It's just that my mind always wanted to always see someone who looked like me. And so I did that for myself, right? I was an overachiever. I was that kid in the front of class that always raised their hands. So I got accolades on, you're a smart girl, you speak so well. But it was always with this diamond in the rough sort of way, right? Like you are the best of this, or you are different than the group. And as a child, none of that was obvious to me, none of it. So I grew up with parents that didn't teach color. I grew up colorblind. But it wasn't until I moved to California that I really understood what that meant. I was proud to say that I was raised colorblind. I was proud that my family was always diverse, that my parents had friends from all over the world, being in the Navy, my father. They were young, they were idealistic, they had lots of young married friends with young children from all over, all colors. And I can remember distinctively my first lessons was how to be a good person before anything else. So that also hit home with me from Tracy. You were to be a good person before you identified as being Black, before I was identified as being a girl. I was taught that people lead with their hearts and that you were a good person and that you stood up for people who could not stand up for themselves and that your heart made the decisions on who your friends were. So my choice of friends wasn't based on their color or what they looked like. And because of that, if that was done to me, it went over my head because it wasn't something that was in the forefront for me. Now, of course, I realized that my friends were blonde and green-eyed and blue-eyed and didn't have the same skin tone as me. I understood that, but I also started to understand that mayo and egg conditioner that you put in your hair at slumber parties didn't wash out as easily in my hair as it washed out in their hair, right? But I had good people around me, and none of that took precedence over that. So culturally in Seattle, there is this mindset of connectedness to nature. I don't ever remember it being explicitly taught to me like I intentionally teach my class. It is a land that is rich of Native American culture, the Pacific Islander culture. And so those were things that I grew up in that seemed very normal to me. And I had the ability to live a childhood wrapped in the magic of nature. And it served as a major learning tool in my life that snuffed out almost every other social commentary on the world that was around me. I spent days in the woods. I rode horses. I caught snakes. I rescued birds that did not need to be rescued, but I did anyway. I was always super interested in the lives of others and other beings. And again, in my adulthood, I understand now that that was a saving grace for me because I was allowed to see beauty in my formative years before I really saw hate and ugly. So now, don't get me wrong. There were definitely times when nasty words were spewed. I can remember one particular time I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and we lived in a small town called Tukwila, which is bigger now. When I lived there, we had no sidewalks. There was one little community center that all the kids went to. We kayaked in the river, and there was a little general store across the bridge. And I remember I had this friend who had brothers, and I don't ever remember anyone being explicitly mean to me. I don't remember her parents. I spent the night at her house. She spent the night at my house. I didn't have Black friends because I don't ever remember any other Black people but my family living in the area. But I remember one day we were walking up my stairs, and all of a sudden a Trans Am, can you imagine that? Came careening around the corner, and a car full of young white boys, one of them who happened to be an older brother of my friend who was with me, yelled out their window, "Nigger!" And my friend's eyes peeled back, and I went, "Where? Where? Who? Where?" I was just astonished. And then immediately what came out of me was honky. I don't know if anyone remembers that word. It's such an ugly word. And I'm sure no one says that anymore. It wasn't like it was necessarily taught to me. And the next thing I can remember is my front door opening and my mother reaching out and yanking me into the house and me being berated like no tomorrow, like I had just stolen something about saying that word. And I was like, but did you just hear what they said to me? Although I didn't quite understand. And my mother just said, you will always have people in the world who will call you out of your name. But words have power, and you have control over your own power. And so you can choose to do like them, or you can choose to be the good person and choose the right words. Right? And so that stuck with me because for the longest, I didn't quite understand, obviously, why these boys who I'd actually been around and, again, had spent the night at their house found that day of a little skinny 8-year-old girl to yell that out at me. He did, and they did end up getting in trouble by their parents. I don't know how much. Again, it was all over my head, but that experience stuck with me. Now, fast forward to an angsty 14-year-old. My parents split up. My sister, mother, and I moved to sunny California, and it was then that I first realized I was Black. Black in the sense that others would see me inherently different. Black in the sense that I was subject to death at a whim. Inherently that I was part of a group regardless of my individuality. And so that was a really big eye-opener for me in a sense that it was at a time that I came into a place with a predominantly Black population that my lack of understanding of my Blackness in a historical sense became something that weighed heavier on my mind. And it was at that point that I realized that being raised colorblind was not always a benefit, but a deficit to my understanding of the power that my people hold and to learn my history and stand on the 2 feet that I have and on the shoulders of those who fought for the rights that I have now, and to honor that. And so now I teach at a school that's ironically a few blocks from that middle school that I ended up in spending my last 3 months of 8th grade in, that middle school where I was constantly told, what are you? I was a obvious Black girl who had a shaved head, I came from Seattle, mind you, that listened to Fishbone and Poison and wore Doc Martens and rode a neon skateboard. I was a hot mess. But it was the life that I knew and where I feel comfortable with. Also realize this is a space now that I'm in where nature was essentially plucked out of my life. There was no more woods in my backyard, no more birds who didn't need to be rescued being rescued. And so I started putting a lot of my passion and thoughts into really understanding, why do other Black people question my Blackness because of the way that I speak? Why is it that because I didn't know what K-Day was, that it made me less Black? And so it wasn't until I went to college that I just all but dived into African American history and learned all of the things that as I became an adult, wished that were things that my parents had taught me when I was much younger, but not wish in a way that I feel like I lost something, because again, I got to see beauty before I got to see ugly. And so now as a teacher, when I talk about what's going on with our world today with our students, I teach in a predominantly minority community. I teach in Inglewood, California. 100% of our students are minority. And I find a heavy responsibility to show my Black babies that this also is what Black looks like, to show them and to breathe Blackness into them so that they feel strong within themselves and don't feel like that they need to live up to a stereotype. We have been working really hard on diversifying just our minority population with our students. I've sat on our equity committee at our school where we have been looking at the disparaged differences in academic outcomes and experiences between our Latin population of students and our Black babies. And there is a huge, across the nation, a huge rift, right? And so not only with that, we were really trying to balance the scales of how many people were in our schools so that our Black babies weren't only one of two, and that our Latin babies had access to other cultures. And so this year we were successful in getting a good group of students who came into our school. And there was one experience I had with a group of our young Black girls who were all sixth graders. And I am the environmental teacher. I run the gardens. And so there are a set of students who come out to the garden during breaks and everything, kind of hang out with me or hang out with the teachers who are doing their supervising there. And there were a group who had came out maybe a couple of months into school who came over like a beehive, over to my area. And, they came over, so you're Miss Tashanda, right? With all the attitude. And I was like, yes, I am, with my garden hat. And they just started questioning me and questioning the look that they had, because I am also the teacher that my own children say I dress like Mrs. Frizzle, I think it's from the Magic School Bus. I take it. I like it. And so they look at me as if like, you're a little different. I don't have the shaved head anymore, but I do wear Doc Martens still. But then as they, I kept telling them, come back, come talk to me, come be with me. I heard one of them say to the other one, you can't take a picture of me like that. I'm too dark for that. And my heart crumbled, because I was a lucky one that was raised in a house, even though I was raised in a predominantly white community, I was also raised in a household where my family, not just my immediate family, but my whole family made sure they breathed beauty into me and told me that my skin was beautiful. So to hear these children denounce themselves and laugh about it made the mama bear in me come out. And so every time I speak into them, I try to speak power into them. And so with what's going on in today's world, I think the biggest thing that I try to get them to understand for themselves is when they are speaking to others who are not like them, when they are speaking to those who are like them, that they have to find a place where they try to understand someone else before they are tried to be understood. And that means when you come into a space like we are now, where my fellow white friends are trying to understand the level of anxiety that we as Black people live every single day, the level of trauma that we have carried in our blood for 400 years. When we are trying to express the anxiety hum that lives here from the moment we are born, I don't want my babies to carry that weight into their future, but I want them to understand it. And I want them to also understand that there are people who are born in this world who never have a hum of anxiety here. They're never going to have that because they don't have the 400 years of oppression that we have. And I also try to teach them all the time. This was something that I heard a while ago, that we must remember that we are souls that occupy a body. We are not bodies with souls. And with that, if you seek someone's soul, then you are able to see that person before you see their body. And that sounds very easy to say, but it is a start. We are dealing with wicked issues, and with wicked issues, you need wicked solutions, which means everybody and everything that we have has to come to the table. And so I hope that what I shared allowed you to see something in your experiences, or to be able to reach out to someone to understand their experiences before you are tried to be understood. I believe that we all, as a human being, I see everything through an eco lens. I'm an environmental teacher. But I do believe that what a friend of mine told me is that we are all born with the intrinsic know-how and knowledge of to be good people and to love each other as a species. And I'm just hoping that today I was able to give you a little bit of language to use to express what you already have held inside of your soul. And that's what I got. Thank you.